Welcome. This is part 2 of the series exposing the climate scam perpetrated by Don Easterbrook. In part 1 I covered the first 20 minutes of his testimony to a Senate committee on energy and the environment. This is part 2. He starts off this next segment with the claim that the satellite data is the gold standard for global temperature measurements. They are not. For a start, they don't even measure temperatures directly, they measure microwave irradiance. You then need a very complicated atmospheric model to turn that irradiance into an effective temperature. Not a real temperature, an effective temperature. In the past we found huge errors in those calculations. Until about a decade ago, the satellite data was indicating that the globe was cooling. It wasn't until they found an error in the satellite orbits that that trend turned from a cooling trend to a warming trend. And they don't even measure surface temperatures. The lowest altitude they measure is about 4 kilometers up in the atmosphere, where the energy balance is completely different from the surface, which is what we're really interested in. At the surface we have the interaction between the atmosphere, the oceans and the land. Up at these sorts of altitude is purely atmospheric effects. And the higher you go, the lower the signature of global warming. And that's why they tend to use these data as opposed to others. He next indulges in what I call unnatural selection. He shows you this section of the RSS temperature analysis from 1998 to 2008, and for some obscure reason he fits a third order polynomial through it, and claims that that shows that the temperature has had a deep decline since 1998. But why is he only showing just this section of the data? Remember, he's talking in 2013 and the RSS data analysis goes back to the 1980s. Here's all of the data. He's just showing you this little section here. Now if I take all of the data and fit the same third order polynomial through it, look what I get. Basically it's a straight line. And if you fit a linear trend through it, which is what you should be doing, you get an increase in global temperatures of about 0.14 degrees centigrade per decade. Now that's less than what you get for the surface temperature, which is about 0.18 to 0.2 degrees centigrade per decade. But nonetheless, it is an upward trend in global temperature. So his data, if you use all of it, shows global warming happening even at these relatively high altitudes. Why does he have this fixation with 1998? Well, the reason is simple. It was the largest El Nino on record, which means that the temperatures in the Eastern Pacific were anomalously high. That has a major effect on the average global temperature. So any changes after that would seem like cooling when things return to near normal. So that's why they're choosing this 1998 date as a reference point. That is true until you get to 2015. Here's a comparison of the El Niños in those years. Now the 1997 was more intense, but the 2015 El Nino was more extensive, and the net warming of both of them was about equivalent. However, the difference in average global temperatures between these two dates is about 0.4 degrees centigrade, so there's been a 0.4 degree increase in global temperatures from 1997 to 2015 for a similar size El Nino. So that again shows there's global warming. If anything, it shows that global warming is increasing. Dr. Easterbrook seems to be suffering from selective memory failure. He states temperatures have not exceeded the temperatures recorded in 1998. Now remember, he's in 2013, and all he had to do would have to go to the NOAA website on climate results, and you'd see this table, and look where 1998 is. Both the years 2005 and 2010 had already exceeded 1998. Now this trend continues. If you look at the current chart, you can see 1998 has slipped even further down the table. All of those other years in this table, you will also note, occurred since 1998. So how can you claim there's been no warming when you keep on setting records? I would like to point out an inconsistency here. And this is true not only of Easterbrook's presentation, but many others from the same sorts of people. In the past, when they thought the data was indicating some sort of cooling or hiatus in global warming temperatures, then they were quite happy with the quality of the data. Now that this is no longer the case, the data is called manipulated or wrong or fudged. They provide no proof of this fudging or manipulation of the data, save to say that they are using the raw data or the original data. Now, as any scientist knows, you cannot use raw data. It means it's uncalibrated and unchecked. It means it could be riddled with errors and have lots of data that is incorrect. So any analysis starts by calibrating the data and getting rid of the bad data. That's what he calls manipulation, and what most scientists call analysis. Dr. Easterbrook says lots of silly things in this video. However, this is one of the silliest things he says so far. There is no ice cap at the North Pole. There's an ocean, so we don't have to worry about it. I'd point out that there is an ice cap and it's called Greenland. It may not be directly at the North Pole, but it's certainly our northern hemisphere ice cap. And it's melting. Now again, I've chosen an image that would have been available to him for his 2013 testimony if he'd wanted to use it. You'll notice the difference between the average 1979 and 2007 of the areas that are melting on the Greenland ice cap, and most of the interior is not being touched by any melting periods at all. Fast forward to 2012 and even the highest points in Greenland are starting to melt. Next we have a piece of pure deception. He claims that polar bear population has risen from 5,000 to 25,000, so they are doing just fine. What he doesn't state is when these numbers were gathered and what they're about. The actual low was about 12,000 in the 1960s, not 5,000. The 5,000 number comes from an undocumented Russian estimate. The reason why the population became so low is they were being hunted to near extinction. The population over the next few decades rose to 25,000 by 1990, after hunting was banned. But since then, the population has been declining again. Here's the chart. Now again, I've chosen the chart that would have been available to him if he had chosen to use it. And you can see that the population peaked just after 1990 and has been in a steady decline ever since. In fact, if you actually have used just data points, then the population currently is at its lowest ebb since detailed records began in 1980. Here we have another deception. He claims that Antarctica isn't melting. He then says you'd have to raise global temperatures by about 100 degrees Fahrenheit to melt the Antarctic ice sheet. Then why is it losing about 200 cubic kilometers of ice every year? Now this data is chosen again to be available to him at the time when he gave his talk. And you can fit a line to this particular data and you can see that the rate of loss is increasing. So this again is a pure deception. How hot was Antarctica when we were ice-free last? That was about 35 million years ago. That's about there. So you see temperatures are about 4 degrees centigrade warmer than they are today. Now that's a little bit unfair because of course we were recovering from the Eocene optimum, which is about 12 degrees warmer than we are today. But that doesn't require 100 degrees Fahrenheit to create the ice-free Antarctica. It requires just a few degrees centigrade over a long period, and that's what we're facing at the moment. He next states that glaciers retreat in advance. That is true, but he's inferring that the current retreat of the glaciers is just part of a natural cycle, which is not true. He says many of the glaciers have stopped retreating since 1998. Now, I was hard pressed to find very many that had done that, but a true statement would be most of them have not. Most of them continue to reduce in length. But actually length does not really matter for glaciers. What the real issue is how much ice there are in them, because although a glacier may still be the same length, if the amount of ice has dropped in it, then it's melting. And we could take a look at a plot of the mass of glaciers globally over the last 60 years, and you can see that the overall mass has dropped significantly. And there is no change in the rate of drop. In fact, if anything, it's increasing since 1998. So that's the next 20 minutes worth of his presentation. And so the ERRORFEST continues. We've had more examples of distortion of the facts. We've had misinterpreted data and data that would be highly relevant to his testimony that's been ignored or omitted deliberately. Up next, he claims that carbon dioxide can't be to blame for global warming. That's going to be an interesting one. But for now, bye until next time.